Yeah, so you may remember last week, or actually let me back up one other thing too this morning. So Kristen got really put on the spot this morning because James was supposed to be leading worship and message. He took a rapid test this morning and tested positive for COVID. So we had to kind of scramble around last minute, and so thank you for coming up with that. That was good. We appreciate that. And yeah, and so you might also notice we're low on numbers otherwise, and that's because a lot of our young people are out at winter camp for our campus ministry. So again, most everybody in here knows that, but for the visitors, I want to just kind of explain. We are part of a campus ministry, and they're doing a weekend retreat out at Sky Ranch, and are out there doing that. So that's where a bunch of our folks are also. But anyway, we started a series last week that I just called Old. And it's kind of morphed into adding the ER on the end, just to not run everybody off completely. But yeah, and the concept behind it is just to let our body, which is a very young body, to hear and gain wisdom from the older generations that are in our church. And I got a lot of really good feedback last week after the talk, and we're going to continue that with a couple of more, at least two more panels over the next 2 weeks. And we've got some different people that are going to talk each week and give a chance for our young people and the body really as a whole to hear from that, because I even heard from folks that were those, the panel last week's peers saying that they really appreciated the discussion. So we're going to continue that, but since a lot of our target audience is missing this morning, we're going to kind of flip those roles. Instead of our older folks speaking to the younger generation, we're going to have some of our younger adults speak to the body just in terms of what kind of needs there are from the younger generation towards the adults in the church. And so this is, I think an equally important discussion to what we talked about last week and are going to be talking about over the next couple of weeks. And I think it's just really good for the body as a whole to hear this. So if you're on that panel, would you guys make your way up here? We've got 4 panel members. Woo! Woo! Why do we have to woo when we're introducing people? I don't know. It's just kind of what happens, huh? That's so weird. Yeah, so let's start off and let's just have each of you guys introduce yourself. So Kelsey, if you want to start down there on the end and just kind of give a quick introduction, who you are, how you came to the church, and anything else you want to add.
Sure. My name's Kelsey. I joined this church, I think, in 2016. I was part of the Focus College ministry, and I was actually in Ashley Obregon's core, and I started coming with her. Yep, that's it.
Hi, I'm Caitlin. I started coming to Wiley in 2014 to lead worship. I had been at UTD leading worship there, and then have stayed, and now we lead jam together. This is my husband, Tim. He can introduce himself, but we're married and both lead jam. We're also pregnant, so I'm 5 months pregnant. I guess you can have mics.
Get tangled over there. Yeah, I'm Tim Hoffman, and I also started coming to Wiley Church around 2014 because of Caitlin. We were dating at the time, I guess. And yeah, I love it here. And like she said, we lead jam, and the kids are a lot of fun. And were we supposed to say something else, or that's it?
That's cool. Hello, I'm Mark Marola. I started coming to the Wiley Church, I guess, 2 or 3 years ago when I started or joined with the Focus Apprenticeship for a year, got connected to this family of churches through Focus, and yeah, now I work as a mechanical engineer and continue getting to serve and work alongside y'all here.
That's great. Thank you, guys. So if you want to put that first question up there, we've got a list of questions, and like we did last week, and not everybody's going to answer every question, so we'll just kind of give everybody an opportunity if they want to speak to it, and I'll kind of, as our moderator here, I'll move us along through here. But this first question is, if there's one thing you could tell the older people in our body to encourage or affirm them, what would that be? So anybody who wants to start us off?
I'll start it off. I just really appreciate like the perspective and the wisdom that older people can provide. I mean, they've experienced a lot of things in their life, and it just makes it so that they can relate to people who are going through some of those same things maybe, or like they can give advice to people, and they, like some of them have been studying God's word for longer than some young people have been alive, and like they just have a lot of insight from that, and insight from their walk with God that they can share and really be an encouraging influence on younger people, and really help them with some of those aspects of life that young people sometimes feel lost on, or like, where am I going with this, or what do I do in this situation type of thing.
Yeah, and I want to interject something here too for both our older and younger people to be hungry for those kinds of relationships, both the chance to mentor a younger person and then the chance as a young person to be mentored by an older person. And that's a core principle in our church, is one-on-one is how it's done. Like, we believe that relationships bring exactly what Tim is talking about, this opportunity for people to connect and do life together. And about a year ago, I did a sermon and challenged the body last year to really look at each person having a Paul, a Barnabas, and a Timothy in their lives. You know, somebody that's on the peer level, a friendship that you can have, somebody that you're mentoring, and then somebody you're being mentored by. And so I want to just interject that, because I think it's so important that in the course of this conversation, that if you're a young person in the audience and you hear something that one of our older panel members says that you resonate with or identify with, go and talk to them and have those conversations and build relationship and ask for time. And the opposite is true as well. Again, if one of these young people or somebody else, shares something that you see in that young person that you could help with, go and have those conversations and talk. We need to be a body that's open like that and willing. That's one of the benefits of being the size we are. As the church body grows, we oftentimes lose the ability to have those more intimate relationships, and that's the reason we try and stay small. We've gotten up to 225, 250 a couple of times in the lifetime of this church, and both times we've planted a church because of that, to try and keep our numbers small. So that's strategic. We want that. And if you look around in here and see, the number of people in here, you can have relationships with people in here, good, deep mentor-mentee type relationships. And so I just don't think there's enough we can say about that. And I really want to challenge you to let the Spirit speak to you through these panels and try and find those relationships yourself. Okay? Anybody else want to answer that?
Yeah, say something. Yeah, I think I've been really encouraged by several of the older people in this church, just that that I've seen a lot of them continue to learn and continue to grow. They haven't become static in their thinking, but I've seen a lot of them just share what they're still learning. And to me, that's really encouraging. And I also just want to say that I've seen a lot of the older people really reaching out to the younger people, reaching out to build those connections. And so while I think we really do want to encourage more and more of that, the fact that we're able to have these conversations in the first place, I think, says a lot about the openness of a lot of the older people, and even just their willingness to stay here, be present in a church where there's a lot of young people, but stick it out and try and connect. And I think that's something I've really admired.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that you guys are so loved and respected and needed in this body. that your consistency of just showing up to church and events and things and participating is noticed and really appreciated. We love when you share and when you encourage us and when you lead, and then our church is really better because of you guys.
Yeah, kind of piggybacking off of that, I was thinking about this question last night. I was just like, y'all are desperately needed in our community. I remember like I was 18 when I think 18, 19 when I joined Focus, and I was very lost, and I desperately needed adults that I could trust in my life, that would lead me and guide me and help me get back on track, because all the other adults in my life I couldn't trust. So just know, like, there's a lot of young people that have hard stuff in their life, and they just need good, God-centered adults in their life.
Let's go to that second question there. What's it like to be a young person in our church? Do you feel connected to our church as a whole? Do you feel seen and cared for by our church? Do you think your experience is average amongst your peers? Anybody have anything for that one?
Yeah, I wrote some thoughts. I think it's a really neat church to get involved with because there's lots of opportunity to step up. Like I mentioned, like we went from helping teach preschool every so often in Jam to like leading it in just 6 years or something. And there's opportunities all around, whether it's sound team or making coffee or helping in Jam or serving in CTF. Like you can come in and be really plugged in, which is really cool. But I think like what's while our church does a good job of like offering these opportunities and or coming to a small group and you're going to have community, I would love to see us grow in initiating like real personal relationships more and more, where past just coming to group, you're being invited over for dinner and coming to someone's soccer game and hanging out for a game night and things like that would be a neat place to see us all move, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I think from what I've seen, the average-ish experience for a lot of the young people in the church is coming in through Focus, which honestly, as a campus ministry, they do really tremendous work, and they really do build a lot of these very close one-on-one relationships. There's a lot of mentoring. There's a lot of very deep scripture studying, and a lot of young people really appreciate and really begin a large part of their walk with God through that. I think the Focus experience is a lot of the young people's experience. Not for everyone, but it's a very significant part. And then I think there's another portion of that once young people graduate from Focus and transition, that there's still a lot of us figuring out what that looks like. And I think for a lot of young people, that's struggling through relationships, that's struggling through how to date well in a culture that is more and more inclined towards divorce or cohabitation. I think that's figuring out what work looks like, that's figuring out how to have good family connections, but there's just a lot of struggles that I think the post-Focus community also has because they're leaving this very tightly structured system, and suddenly most of the structure they have around their faith life is removed. And so being able to watch older people that have really worked through this for a long time, have figured out what their own structures look like for their relationship with God, I think is tremendously helpful for a lot of those younger people.
That's good.
Yeah, I think, like speaking personally, feeling connected to church has been something that's been kind of difficult for me over the past couple years. Just with like, I think I had made a lot of connections to people of my same age group and life stage. And when we planted the Plano Church, a lot of those people went to the Plano Church. Like our entire small group that year, except for us, went to the Plano Church. And so it kind of forced me to have to start over, like make new connections, and really gave me an opportunity to make more of those cross-generational connections. But unfortunately, then the pandemic came and we were meeting on Zoom for a while, and that made things difficult to really connect with people. And I think it's like something that I need to keep working on, is like making those cross-generational relationships. And I mean, it's been encouraging recently with more people in our life stage coming to Wiley Church again. But I think I have to not fall into like, let me just connect with the people that it's maybe easier to connect to. Because for me, that is the easier thing, is to connect with people that are more in my similar age group. And I think it also has been encouraging though, like Sunday mornings when I come in and like see Bob or Joy, and they're just always so friendly and so nice, and it just really brightens my mood to like see them and say hi to them, and they're just really great people.
Let's go to that next question. What needs do you or your peers have from the church body? In what ways are those needs being met? In what ways are they not? What could we do better to meet those needs? Anybody have anything on this one?
I kind of mentioned this already, but yeah, I think with just, we all need community. And so I think, like I said, we do a great job of having community offered in this kind of like take it or leave it manner, with small groups or service opportunities or things like that. But I would love more people to initiate at a personal level, you know, asking people to lunch after church or come over for dinner during the week. I'd love, you know, to let us see what is life like with kids or grown kids or empty nesting. What does that look like for you guys? And, you know, as much as I desire to make myself better at this too, I know that I do let things like living in Plano or being in an apartment hold me back of like, oh, I can't have kids over, what would they do? Like, we have nothing to play with or things like that. But I think it would be really sweet to, you know, see that, like to join, like to go over to someone's house for dinner, or maybe even you get several people together. If one other couple seems intimidating, like couples and singles, like that could be really neat to do. Even like, you know, make a goal of once a month or once every 6 months would be a start for some people. I've seen my parents, they go to the Garland Church and they're just so good at this. It's really one of their strengths. They have people over very consistently, and they've built a lot of sweet relationships with lots of younger people, and so now they can babysit, and they give marriage advice, and they give advice with how to deal with older parents, and it's been really neat to watch, and I would love that to see that more and more in our body.
Yeah, I want to say something here that I think happens a lot of times is we talk ourselves out of doing this. And I think it happens on both sides. You know, the older generation will often think, well, you know, they wouldn't want to come and have dinner with us, or, you know, we're whatever, fill in the blank. We're too busy, we're boring, we're, you know, whatever. And so we end up kind of talking ourselves out of these things happening. And we have to get past that. And I think we need a culture too where our young people will ask for that, you know, to see a couple and say, you know, hey, do you mind if a friend of mine and I come over and talk through a few things with you, or, you know, whatever that is. I think we need the engagement to happen better on both sides, where our older people are, you know, asking for that to happen, but our younger people are also engaging and asking for that to happen. So I just, as you were mentioning that, I think so many times we talk ourselves out and give ourselves excuses as to why we shouldn't do that. And I just think that's the enemy trying to divide us.
Yeah, and I wanted to say, like, you guys in this room, like, we're all older than someone. You know, there are going to be younger people in our body too. Like, this doesn't have to be this, like, oh, if only someone will talk to me. Like, we need to initiate both ways, like reach out to our younger peers too.
Yeah, I think another thing that I was just thinking about a little bit is that I think a lot of the younger people need to see perseverance expressed and done well. That college students think in semesters. They think in these 6-month chunks, and then summer's this weird time in between. But yeah, there's this transition really from thinking in short term, these short term sprints of growth, to this longer term, I'm in it for the long haul. My problems are bigger. My trust in God needs to grow alongside this. And being able to watch adults who really have persevered with God for a long time, who have persevered through hard things, I think is a huge necessity for our young people. Yeah, there are so many distractions. Young life feels fast-paced, and I'm sure older life feels fast-paced as well, but y'all have done it for a while, and you know how to respond to those things, and so we desperately need advice and help in those areas.
This next question kind of goes along with this. What hinders you or your peers from initiating one-on-one friendships with the older members of our church?
I think just believing that the older members are too busy. I know I fall into they have kids, they own a business, they do this, they do that. They're too busy to spend time with me, but that's just not true.
Yeah, and I'll say, as somebody who is busy, who tries to cover a lot of ground in a week, just in different areas of my life, sometimes I do make myself too busy, but that's a problem. And oftentimes it's a young person asking me to spend time that helps me remember, hey man, you're trimming right up to the edge of your field. You need to make space here and make sure that there's room, to give people time. And I would just encourage our adults in here that you make sure you have that time. Because it's so easy to just get busy, and even if you're not busy, you're recuperating from being busy, which creates a problem too. So that's just one of those deals that the older generation needs to be mindful of. It can certainly happen to the younger generation as well, but I think for us as adults, we need to be mindful of that. Someone else?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Like John was saying, I think can be an issue with the younger generation too. I see myself sometimes being oh, I'm too busy. There's no way I can schedule time with someone this week. And have to think through those same things of okay, what areas of my life am I overcommitting myself, or what areas of my life am I just having this idea that I'm too busy, but I'm really not. I'm filling my life with things that aren't important, or things that are just there to waste time because I don't know what else to do, but they've become a part of what I consider something I have to do at that point, but they're really useless. Like watching TV, just sort of can fall into that, but it's not something that can have a lot of meaning to your life in most cases. And I feel personally, I just tend to be overly self-reliant sometimes, and oh, I can figure this out. I can do this on my own, and just forget that other people would be happy to talk through something with me, or give me advice, or just listen and be there for me. If it's a case they can't give advice, you're yeah, that's really hard. But I'll be praying for you about this, and just kind of be there and be an extra voice to God, or voice to you if they have something to tell you.
Yeah, and I actually found myself this morning writing an email to somebody who didn't ask me for advice, but I feel like they needed some thoughts that I had. And so I wrote up the email and then messaged them and said, hey, I've got some thoughts about this. If you'd like to hear them, let me know and I'll send them to you. And no is a perfectly acceptable answer. If you want to go do that on your own, you can. But I have these thoughts, and so there's some maybe weird responsibility, I think, that the older generation has to offer advice even when we're not asked. Now, it can be turned down, and don't get your feelings hurt. Like before I sent that message, I was like, it's not going to hurt my feelings if she says, no, I don't need that advice. I'm just going to go ahead and do this on my own. And just know, no is an answer, and it's a perfectly acceptable answer. But sometimes if you see something, I feel a responsibility over you. One, as a pastor and an elder, but then two, as just a brother in Christ. And I feel like we need to have those conversations. So I would just say that to encourage, our older crew. If you see something, say something, and or at least offer it. And it can be turned down, and that's okay. But maybe there's something you need to say that would spark that. So let's go to that next question. What qualifications do you look for in someone you would want to follow as they follow Christ? And this is a reference to Paul saying, imitate me as I imitate Christ. What are you hoping for out of mentorship with an older person? What qualifications are you looking for, and what are you hoping for out of that?
Yeah, I think something I've noticed, which this is a severe overgeneralization, but I've noticed that most older people tend to go one of two directions. They tend to either become more and more jaded with time and more just closed and self-focused, or they tend to become more and more compassionate and other-focused. And I really do admire those people who, after a lifetime of life struggles, have found a way to pull that through the lens of Christ and say, God brought me through all of this, rather than life did this to me and I'm stuck at the bottom. And so that's often what I look for. I look for people with compassion. I look for people with grace, for people in which I see the Spirit of Christ, who have been through a lot, but still come out the other side and say, praise God. That's what I really look for.
Yeah, I mean, beyond that, just that phrase, follow Christ, kind of sticks out to me as like, that's it. Like, they need to be following Christ, and like they can lead you to follow Christ as they follow Christ. And I think there's also an aspect of like openness and vulnerability, just like hearing people talk, maybe during community sharing, of just like they're willing to be open about like what's going on in their life or what struggles they've gone through. And I feel like that kind of signals to me like that person is someone I could talk to, because they're willing to be open about like what they've gone through, and I think they can give advice from that and give guidance from that place of openness.
Yeah, I think that's kind of one of my visions is, while you could have a very specific mentor relationship, that it's neat when we have, tons of people in our body who do share week to week, or maybe you're in your small groups over the years, where eventually the more you get to know people in this body, you will start to develop, hey, they would be a good person to go through when we're going through grief and grieving, and I know their story, and I know they would be able to speak into that, or they would be really good to talk to about giving marriage advice in this situation, or dealing with some other family issue going on, because I've seen them go through that. And so when you guys are vulnerable, it lets us know, like, hey, you're a safe person to talk to, which is what Kelsey kind of mentioned too.
Yeah, one thing I'll just throw in here is confidentiality is a big thing. And so, and it works both ways, I think, in a mentor-mentee relationship. Vulnerability is important, but those things that are shared should stay in that relationship unless permission is given otherwise. And so I just think I've seen sometimes through the years where some conversations, information got out that just shouldn't have gotten out, and it was just a lapse in judgment. There wasn't any ill intent. It was just the information got out. And so I think it's important to communicate. If you are transparent and share something, if you don't want it repeated, say that. This is something that's personal. I don't mind sharing it with you, but keep it to yourself unless you check with me otherwise. And then honor that if that request is made of you. So this next question, if there's one thing you could tell the older people in our body that would help them to understand the younger people better, what would that be?
I wrote, we're awkward. So we're okay if you're awkward too. We don't need to see you at your best, but we would love to see what following and trusting God looks like in different seasons of life, and parenting and being busy, and marriage and grieving and loss. Like, it's okay, we can both make the first step, and if it feels awkward, that's cool.
Anyone else on that one?
I guess that's all you need to know.
Understand ourselves, obviously.
Okay, let's go on to this next question. If there's one thing you could tell the older people in our body to challenge them to become more like Christ, what would that be? And in parentheses we have here, remember, we address our elders gently and with great honor. Anybody have anything here?
Yeah, I'll just read what I wrote. Sorry, I'm not good at summarizing otherwise. So I don't know if this will speak to anyone, but I know in our society it's often said that loneliness is plaguing our older generation, and honestly, I think our younger generations as well. But we are God's people. He's always with us. And so I think it's important to just remember that sorry, I got lost. I would encourage you to not let Satan have this foothold on you, to let you believe that you're just lonely. God's always with us, and he cares deeply for us and loves you more than we can understand. And he's also given you this community. And while each of the people in this community are flawed and miss the mark on loving each other the way we should, don't let Satan's lies keep you from thinking that you aren't wanted or valued or loved. Keep showing up, keep initiating, keep seeing how God is putting people and opportunities in your life to grow relationships with people in our church. When we let Satan convince us to worry only about ourselves, it's easy to start feeling sorry for yourself. But when we take on the mindset of Christ and put others before ourselves, that's where we will be fulfilled. There's some axioms we used in Focus. If you love enough people will love you back. And it's usually pretty easy to be someone's best friend. These remind us that any feeling of loneliness you're feeling is felt by plenty of people around you. So again, please don't stay in that mindset for long. Go to God and let him remind you how loved you are by him. And then let his Spirit speak to you and show you where you are needed in our body and who you could be a friend to.
Yeah, I wanted to speak just briefly on something that I think is really important to our church specifically, which is just the communications we have in the back before and after church starts. I think that a lot of times we just tend to congregate in age groups, and there definitely are interactions between the older and younger people, and I think that is really great, and that's how we start building these friendships. That's how these conversations of, hey, let's go get lunch, let's learn more about each other, get started. But yeah, I just want to encourage both the older and younger people, when we are in this sort of preparatory time for worship, that we are being intentional and really forming those friendships. And so certainly spend times with the people you know that are in your age group, but also really try and break away occasionally. Go talk to someone who's older or younger than you. And especially in those times, let's be really intentional. Let's both the older and younger people, try to ask each other good questions and just be open and honest and vulnerable. Share what's going on in your life. Share a story from your weekend. Share something that's more than just, yeah, I'm doing okay, because I've just seen some of those interactions try to get started and just haven't really clicked. And I think that if we both the younger and older people, really try to connect in a better way, I think that there could be some really awesome stories to come out of that.
Caitlin sort of mentioned this on an earlier question, I think, about just like living life with people and doing things with people, including people in your life. I think this applies across like all generational gaps, because I kind of learned this in Focus from the people that were older than me kind of mentoring me, where there's only a small age gap there, but just like seeing like when they would bring me along to like, hey, just come hang out with me today, and like I got to do all these things, or I'm going to go here and do this, and but just hang out with me. I think that can be a really valuable time for people, especially I think even more so when like I'm getting to see how someone is interacting with their spouse or interacting with their children. They're at home with them, or like I'm having dinner with the family, and just seeing like how they approach all these different aspects of life that maybe wouldn't come up if I'm just gonna like sit down and have lunch with Bob one day or something. And yeah, I just think that kind of seeing people in all those aspects can be really valuable. And I know sometimes that can be difficult to do, or like can be intimidating to do, just like inviting someone into your home more so than just like, let's go have dinner somewhere. But I think it can be a really valuable time as well.
Yeah, and I'll just say as a challenge to our older crew, keep showing up. Like, you know, we want this. I mentioned this last week. Just my vision for this body is that we're a family that carries on for generations and generations and generations together. And as such, there's going to be conflict. There's going to be things that we don't see eye to eye on or agree about, and that's okay. Like, we can work through that with the common denominator of Christ. We can figure anything out, and that may take just agreeing to disagree, and that's okay too. And so I think too many times we create church to be this thing that we're just going to get with people who are all like-minded and think exactly what we think. Well, I mean, I don't know. I don't see that in the larger kingdom scenario, that there's people that I believe love the Lord wholeheartedly and are in a right relationship with him, and I don't agree with some of their doctrine. But I'm going to let God sort that out. I'm going to do what he calls me to do and try and love people well and be unified. And then ultimately the judgment is his, and he can sort that out in the end. And, it's sad to me to think that a bunch of Christians will stand before the throne someday and be frustrated at who they see the Lord accepting. I mean, think about that visual. That's sad. I want to be, and staying within our faith and our guidelines and our convictions and honoring those, but also being accepting of all people, that God's working on everybody. You know what I'm saying? Like it's he's working things out, and depending on where they are in that process, they may agree with us and they may not. So I say all that to just say for our older people, like, we need you here. I really appreciate what Caitlin was saying, that we need you in this body, in this family. And if you start feeling otherwise, please talk to one of us. Okay, last question. Take a few minutes to cast your vision for what you want our Wiley family to look like as we grow over the next several years. Paint a vision for the older people in the room to help them see how they are a vital part of that vision coming to fruition.
Yeah, I think the vision is just that we are a connected people of God that serves one another. That every young person knows at least one older person that they can call up and say, hey, my life's really crazy right now. Can I just talk through this with you? That every older person has a younger person that they can call and say, hey, this thing broke at my house and I'm about to go fix it. Do you want to come help me? Or, hey, I'm just feeling lonely. Could we go grab lunch? I think the vision is that we really do grow and mature and learn from one another. And ultimately, I think the vision is that we continue to spread out and grow and plant more churches, but that there is constantly the training up of new leaders, of new disciples with wisdom and experience that can go out and do that, or to stay behind and continue to rebuild. And so,
something that I see, like, or a value I do want to see is just boldness in relationships, like just as we grow as a community together. Just the older people being bold in the questions that they ask younger people and really challenging those friendships and relationships to dig deeper. And same thing with the young people, just being people that go to older people and seeking advice from them. Just consistency in friendship, regardless of the stage of life that you're in, and just having people that you can go to.
My vision is really for church to feel like our big family. We're really excited for you guys to get to hold and love on our baby and see some of that, and for her to have all these extra aunts and uncles and grandparents. And I loved at the retreat like how many trunk or treats we had, and we have, compared to the kids we have in our church, and that's really sweet. It's a cool vision. And so I think just to keep doing that, and then at our level, it's just going to take intentionality, just like it does with your family. Like, you have to make the call, grab lunch, spend time together, set up dinners. That happens in your own family, and so it's going to need to keep happening here for us to keep building that feeling where, in 5 years, we have a vision of, hey, I've been intentional, and I've sought out to meet these people, and now look how many friendships we have.
Yeah, and I wrote down just like seeing more cross-generational friendship, and that's across like all generations. I feel like it's easy for me to fit it in my head, like, oh, we have the young crowd, like the focus students, and then we have like the huge group in the middle, and then like the handful of people in our church who are like older, But like there are so many generations in there, and I think like those friendships across generations at every boundary, and I think like every group has so much to offer to the other groups. Like I was saying earlier, like the generations who are older have like life experience and advice to offer to the younger people, and like passing down like their faith and like their walk with God and what they've learned from that to younger people. I mean, that's what we see time and time again in the Bible, is just like the older generation passing down their faith on to the next generation. And I think that's so valuable, and like for us to have in this church community. And then like the younger generations have like often more vibrancy and like energy to offer, and like this kind of get things done attitude. And I think that those like ideas and can build on what the older generations have done. Just thinking in terms of like church building and church planting and stuff like that, like the older generations who have been around and helped build this church can pass on to the next generation, like what they've learned from that experience, and what worked for them and what didn't work for them when they were building this church. And then the next generation can take that and kind of build on it, tweak things, see what works now. And I think like those, like it just takes a lot of cross-generational support to kind of build community and build this church and keep it growing and vibrant.
That's really good. Okay, well, thank you guys. Let's give them a round of applause.